In this video, we're going to talk about operating systems and what an operating system is, and what it consists of, and what types of operating systems do we have today. Okay, we'll first of all look at old operating systems, so you can actually see one right in front of you on the screen. This one's called MS-DOS. It was first released in 1981, and then there was different versions that came after that. So this one, as you can see, is a text-based operating system. Okay. Now, operating systems, what do they do? Well, it's a suite of programs. Okay, a suite of programs that controls the hardware and software of a computer. It provides common services for computer programs to work. So for example, if you were using Microsoft Word to write a letter, it wouldn't work without an operating system. If you were using Google Chrome or Safari on a MacBook, they wouldn't work without an operating system. If you wanted to play a game on your computer, it wouldn't work without an operating system. So an operating system is key for a computer to work, essentially. Now, MS-DOS here, you can see as it's text-based, I want to see if I can try and go into some subfolders or into my C drive. So the C drive is the hard drive of the computer. So I have to type dir for directory, and I can see now all of the files. I've got 20 files in here, and that's 397,000 bytes, and I've got 900,000 bytes free. Okay, I've got a couple of subdirectories, demos and games, and I've got some applications here. You can see executable files as well. I've got one here called cal, so I could just type that in. It might be a calculator or a calendar, and it's a calendar. So you can see November 2019, and it's got a star over the 8th, so it's 8th of November 2019. So directory again. What else have we got here that we could have a look at? Well, we could just look inside of demos. Okay, so if I want to change directory, I actually have to type this in. So cd for change directory and demos. All right, now I'm in demos. I can type in dir again and see what's in this. So I've got all of these files. I've got 10 files inside of demos. Okay, as well, if I'm not interested in anything that's in there, I would want to go back out. So change directory, go back out, and then change directory again, and maybe go into games. That's a bit more interesting. Okay, so inside the games, I can now have a look at the games that I've got. So I've got Tetris, Snake, Minesweeper, I think that's called, Jumper, Invaders, and Rogue. So Tetris and Snake. These two games were on the old Nokia mobile phones. Before smartphones, you could have these two games for sure, and they're classic games. So we could actually try this out. So Tetris, we'll try. There we go, it's up and running, and I can play the game essentially. Move these around, try and stack them up the way I want them. Oh, maybe not doing as well as I should be doing. I used to be quite good at this game, played it an awful lot when I was a kid. And there you have it. Okay, so you can see the graphics are super ancient. I mean, they're like really, really basic. Let's move on to another operating system. This one is called Microsoft Windows. You probably recognize Microsoft Windows. And this Microsoft Windows 1.01, it was released in 1985. So the year before, in 1984, the Apple Mac, they released on an operating system called they now call it the Classic Macintosh System software, and it was in 1984, and it had Windows, and it had not Microsoft Windows, but it had Windows and icons that you could click on, so it had a graphical user interface, so it was a bit different. Okay, But this one, as you can see, it's a little bit more updated. We've got now drop-down menus, right? So big change here, which makes it easier. You don't have to just type everything. You can see some applications actually that are very familiar, such as Notepad, right? We have Notepad on Windows 10, for example. You probably have Paint as well, but it might be 3D Paint now. You can see readme.doc, so that's a document that would be like from Microsoft Word. Okay, so it's really interesting that you can see these kind of things. So I've got a calendar again, so I can double click on this calendar and you can see I get that up, and I can actually flick through days now, and I can even put an alarm. So this is a bit more like what you would, a bit more familiar to what you can get these days, right? But obviously the graphics are still not as good, right? But we're talking about 1985 here, so it's still quite a long time ago. What else have we got that we could have a look at? Paint, right? Well, this would be a good time to look at Paint. So nowadays you have something like 3D Paint, so I can obviously scribble something on the screen here. I've got the text tool as well, so I can say hello. I can then use a move tool. Well, it's not really moving much there. I can draw boxes. And there you have it. Okay, so that's Microsoft Windows 1.01, 1985. So let's move quite a few years forward and go on to Windows 98. Now, this starts to look a lot more like what you get today. So this is a lot similar to the kind of Microsoft Windows that you would be used to using. So we've got the start menu. It's a little bit different, but of course it's got that menu that sort of comes up. We can go to programs. So although it looks a little bit different nowadays, but it's more or less the same principles. We've got Windows Explorer, which is pretty much the same as what you get on Windows 10, but they just call it Explorer now. So let's take a moment to talk about the different kind of aspects of operating systems. Well, there's three main types of operating systems that you would get on desktop computers, laptops, and even servers, computer servers that hold websites and things like that. And that would be Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. And then you've also got mobile phone operating systems, of course, and you've probably used those. And the most common ones are iOS, which is developed by Apple, Android, which is developed by Google, and of course you've got Windows Mobile, developed by Microsoft again. Okay, so Microsoft have developed over the years loads of different versions of Windows and so on. But what about what an operating system does? So apart from what you can see on the screen, that it gives you this graphical user interface, we've got different aspects of an operating system that's worth talking about. So one of those would be managing processes. So the operating system, as it's making sure that the hardware and software resources are being managed, it manages the processing that goes on. So this is where it will divide up, say, a program and send bits of information to the processor, which is the CPU, right? The central processing unit. And it would also decide on, say, like the level or priority of any given process and make sure that things are happening as quickly as possible. Okay. What else have we got? Well, we've got memory management. That's really important because you've got RAM, which is memory, random access memory, on the computer, but you've got a limited amount. So in today's computers, you might start with about 4 gigabytes of RAM, but you get better computers that have got 8 gigabytes of RAM, 16, 32, 64, and so on, right? But if you've got programs open, like I've got 2 programs open here, we have to manage that memory because these 2 programs are now currently in our memory. So these applications get allocated addresses, okay, addresses in RAM, and that's very important that these are then managed, because otherwise it just wouldn't work, right? You wouldn't be able to open two programs at the same time. Another aspect of an operating system would be the file management. So the operating system ensures that there's enough space in memory to load files from a hard disk, things like that. And then what else is there? Well, you've also got input and output management. So the operating system essentially handles all of the inputs and outputs. So you can see this on a screen. So this is a monitor, and the monitor is an output device. So the operating system has to manage all of that and what you see on the screen. What else have we got? Well, I'm clicking with a mouse. So the mouse is an input device, and that is managed by the computer, and making sure that everything I move across on the screen is managed, and it actually relates to clicks on the screen. As you can see, I'm moving these cards on this game. Okay. We've also got the keyboard, which is an input device. You've got hard disks, which would be the hardware, right? So the hard disks are storage. And then you might have other things like another type of storage, like a pen drive. You might have a CD drive or a DVD or Blu-ray, and you might also have printers. So these are all managed by using drivers, what we call drivers. And drivers, sometimes you might not have a driver, so you can install it or download it. Usually you download it these days. So if you plug some new device into your computer, say it's a mobile phone, by default it doesn't always have the drivers, so it needs to download those from the internet. Okay, that's the end of the video on operating systems.